He has them all sit down, all 5,000 of them, on the lawn, blesses the content of a lunch bag, and feeds the people. And when they are fed, there is more food than what was there initially. At the heart of this story, I believe, is the message that what we perceive as our inadequacies actually keep us from participating effectively and unselfishly in helping and healing our weary world. We are all vulnerable to feelings of inadequacy. As one who has to prepare a sermon every week, I often catch myself staring at the computer screen with the blinking cursor hypnotizing me, wondering what I have to say. I finally sometimes get enough courage to put my fingers on the keys. But what goes on in my head sounds something like this. I don't have anything new to say about this. These people have heard this story so many times before. They've all heard it. And then the critic kicks in and starts saying, "That's stupid. Nobody wants to hear that." I once read a story about another minister who confessed that he was extremely unsure of himself after he had finished seminary and he was working as an associate pastor in a downtown church, a large downtown church, and he was required to lead worship every so often. He said he was glad that the pulpit was wide and solid, that no one could see that his knees were shaking behind the pulpit. His worst nightmare, though, became a reality one Sunday while he was leading the Lord's Prayer. He forgot the words. Luckily, the congregation kept the prayer going. Ever since, he said he never enters the pulpit without a little copy of the Lord's Prayer in order not to forget that situation again, not to forget the words. So even after 3 years of seminary training and some 10 years of standing in the pulpit, we often, as ministers, feel inadequate to the task of ministry. Also, some of you know I'm also a therapist, and I have at times seen people who have had the courage to face their own fears of inadequacy, such as parents who are frustrated with their parenting skills or the lack thereof, couples who feel as if they don't have a clue about how to make a marriage work, or people in the throes of midlife crises struggling with a sense of self-worth. I used to meet with children who had feelings of never being good enough for their parents. I think all of us deal with feelings of inadequacy at some time or another. There are times that our feelings of inadequacy come close to matching the inadequacies that the disciples must have been feeling that day with the task of feeding 5,000. We here at Spring Valley Presbyterian are not immune to those feelings of inadequacy either. As our session met this past Saturday, not yesterday, but the Saturday before, we reviewed the quarterly statement. It's actually the yearly, halfway through the year, financial statement as one of our tasks. It appears that we are in the hole about $11,000, which is what we had budgeted to be in the hole for. But you can still imagine the session's concerns, which were expressed openly. And while we know we have reserves in store, we were all clear that we do not want to have to tap into those reserves. The expenses of running the food pantry are increasing as the needs of our community are increasing due to the economic recession. But in these past couple of weeks, the food pantry has received so much food from the Huntington Food Bank that we are now in the process of somehow figuring out how we can purchase a freezer so we can store that food. And there are a couple of options out there that we're checking on. No one on the session, though, no one who works in the food pantry would ever consider closing this expensive but necessary venture. This is the mission of our church, to feed the hungry. we are like, as a church, that poor little boy with a lunch bag of bread and fish, and we trust that Jesus will take it and use it to feed the multitude. In fact, just this week alone, we served 27 families. One of those families had 10 members living in a small house under the same roof. We fed them all. And guess what? I think there were at least 12 baskets, 12 grocery carts left over. I think that this is the moral of the story of the feeding of the 5,000. Even when we are feeling inadequate or low on cash, we must maintain the courage to do what we can, however small it seems, if only providing a bit of crumbly bread and some dried up fish. The important message is to not give up or not to give in. It's interesting. Some of you heard the ringing of the bell as you came in, which hadn't been rung in a long time. That we got into a discussion around that this morning in Sunday school. And it reminds me of a story I heard about another man who wouldn't give up or give in. His name was Dr. Benjamin Ewell, and he was an elderly president of the William and Mary College back in the 1881s, and they were in a financial strap after the Civil War. There were tremendous financial problems that plagued the school, and in 1881, the second oldest college, William and Mary, closed its doors. Doc Ewell, the old president of the college, though, didn't give up. Some say he should have, but he didn't. Every morning at precisely when the classes were to begin, Doc Ewell would go into the school and ring the school bell. Not just for 1 week, not just for 1 month, not just for 1 year, but for 7 years, Doc Ewell rang that bell. Eventually, financial backers, inspired by Ewell's persistence, came to support the school of William and Mary, and it reopened its doors, and has remained open ever since. Sometimes all you can do is get up and ring the bell. The point being is we do what we can, and we trust that God is working with the little offerings we give. A few loaves of bread and a couple of cans of tuna. Bottom line,